I bought this camera right here with my own money for my own business, and I kind of want to talk about it. This is my first month with the S1ii. This thing has one of the most ludicrously beefed up spec sheets I've ever seen on a camera, especially for the price. It has really pretty fantastic image quality, an amazing body design and form factor, and that one big issue that a lot of people are talking about. And we're gonna get into all those things: the image, the body design, what people have said on the internet, good, bad, everything in between. So yeah, let's just get right into it. So one of my first big questions was the image. Now, a lot of people had some issues with the S5 II, me included, with the image being really clean and nice, but also having an edge of digital over sharpening, digital noise reduction. A lot of people like me really like the older image quality of like a GH5S or an S1H or the GH6. And so I'm happy to report that the S1ii is better than the S5 II in my opinion, but it's not nearly as creamy, dreamy, and organic as the S1H or the GH6 or something along those lines. So it's good. I'm glad it's improved a little bit and it's less digital looking. When a footage is nice and punchy like that, it does tend to survive online compression better. My GH6 footage looked great on my computer, but it always was a little mushy online. I do like how the noise is handled on this camera and the image is handled on this camera in general. And that's something that is really hard to show online, and not that many people have talked about, although a few have for sure. And a bunch of people have pointed out things about the dynamic range of this camera. Oh, there's the dynamic range boost. Oh, it's got the same or worse dynamic range than the S5 II. And without getting super scientific, like, it's really good dynamic range. Like I would say the normal modes look basically the same as the S5 II for dynamic range. I don't think anybody is gonna notice it having less or more dynamic range. It might have more, honestly, just with how the shadows store information. And then when the dynamic range boost is turned on, like, yeah, if I look at the false color, things like that, it does look a lot better for sure. And like I can see it go, oh look, there's all that highlight detail. When I look at the actual shots I've shot with the dynamic range boost, I'm not sure if it's like a night and day difference, but it is a nice feature to have. I do like it. Another thing I want to talk about is the color, which I kind of forgot about in my initial recording. So yeah, compared to the S5 Mark II, the S5 Mark II X, the GH7, it's kind of in that same color zone. Basically all of the phase detect cameras have this similar color, although I have been really happy with the images. So maybe that's partially the dynamic range, maybe that's partially the softer image, but I think it's also due to the colors just being a little bit better. I don't think it's night and day, but yeah, they look really good right out of the gate. It looks really good once you grade it. I love the new Smallrig A2. I haven't really used the natural profiles that much, but they've all looked just that much better than the S5 II. I also want to talk about the sensor, the dual gain sensor and the dual output sensor. So we talked about the output part with the dynamic range boost, but I actually really do think that 640 and 5000 is like a really great ISO range for your noise performance. So of course the 640 looks incredible, the 5000 looks incredible, but there's a few things that I think people haven't talked about, and it's essentially from my eye, at least on this camera, the 640 and the 5000 look incredibly similar. And you're like, okay, well, that's not that much different than the S5 II and the S5 IIX, right? No. So with the S5 II and the S5 IIX, the 4000 was not that clean, really. The 4000 looked a little bit more like 1600, and so it was not interchangeable. While I find on this camera, the the 5000 looks quite a bit better than the 4000 did on the S5 II. Not sure why. Maybe it's a bit of processing. Maybe it's just a better sensor. Probably that one. But yeah, and I think generally I find the entire ISO range cleaner than the S5 II. Great low light camera, pretty good no light camera, and this is one thing that I think is a big improvement from the S5 II. Haven't tested this directly, so it might not be as big of a difference as I'm thinking, but it does feel like that. Overall, really impressed by the image. And quick aside for photos, the photos look really great as well, but I don't really have anything to show right now, or at least anything I can show. So yeah, we'll talk about the photos maybe in a future video. But overall, image quality, very good. And yeah, this camera has a ton of frame rates and codecs and specs and things like that, but really, as a wedding filmmaker, as a content creator, one of my most frequently used modes is just 4K 60. That's why I could never really fully embrace the S5 II. It was great for a lot of things, but getting B-roll and 60 frames a second in slow motion was not one of those things. And so that's one of the big reasons why the GH6 and 7, I just found out the other day, I was using the GH6 over the S5 II, even with the better autofocus for weddings because of the 60 frames a second. So it's a really important thing. And now we have even more bonus things like 4K 120, which is unnecessary for me, but kind of cool when you need it, with a minor crop. We've got 6K 60, we've got 5.1K open gate 60. All these frame rates I have used and been using, and they are all super nice. And I used to have to go back to my Micro Four Thirds cameras for that. It's nice to have zero compromises, full frame, 60 and 120 frames a second. Next thing is the autofocus. Again, something that a lot of people have had mixed reportings on. Some saying it's the best autofocus that Lumix has ever done. Some saying that it is kind of a one step forward, one step back, and I think I'm in kind of camp two. I think overall it is a lot better, significantly better, but I have been getting that sort of fluttering that some people have seen in their footage. Usually it seems to be at higher ISOs, definitely when you're a little bit on the underexposed side. But sometimes it just happens. And sure, I do use some third-party lenses like 7 Artisans lenses, which tend to do it more, but I have got it to happen on my Sigma 28-105, which is considered a first-party lens. So yeah, the autofocus is kind of weird. It's a lot better, but this little fluttery thing that's happening is a little bit disconcerting. Plus that urban, sport mode for autofocus is actually really helpful. I just started doing all these videos with this amazing dancer, Fate, and you can follow her down in the description if you want to. Amazing dancer, but especially when people are getting low, when people are laying down, when people are twisting around and doing all this stuff, the autofocus back in the day, which I did shoot the S5 II with her for a while, the S5 II, the GH7 could get confused, and the S1 II just never did and never does when you're in that mode. So actually a really great, if not super niche, autofocus mode. But let's talk about this body design. I think it's great. It's really amazing. Like, the things that people say are great really are. I mean, the biggest upgrades to me are probably like the tally light. This is really great. I love seeing this on these newer cameras. I hope every camera has this in the future. I wish the S9 had it. This front record button as well. Like, people complain about it. If you don't like it, turn it off. But if you're on a gimbal or a shoulder rig or you're recording yourself, it's just the most convenient button, and it is really nice. And having 3 different record buttons on this camera has been really awesome. I also love the shutter shield. I would say if you're someone that uses a zoom lens a lot, it's probably not that big of a deal, but if you use primes, this is invaluable, that shutter shield, because when you're in the moment of like a wedding and you're changing lenses quickly, 24, 35, 50, 85, going back and forth, being able to just turn the camera off, switch the lens, protect your sensor from dust and other things like I have fairly dirty camera sensors for this reason. And let me see, I think this is probably the cleanest. This is definitely the cleanest sensor I've ever had after 1 month of use. So yeah, very cool. And then of course we got to talk about the back screen, you know, the flippy, the pull out, everything. Like, it is really fantastic. So the GH7 kind of had like 2 tilt up situations. It didn't tilt up as far, and it kind of just had 2 modes it locked into. This is smooth all the way up. It pops out, it flips out, you know, it goes all the way up. Like, you can be viewing this from so many different angles, and it really is fantastic. Like, sometimes people talk these features up a little bit, but this is one that I think has not been talked up enough, probably. It is just so useful as someone who at times will use monitors and big rigs and all that sort of stuff, but at times I just want the camera by itself. And yeah, this is super, super helpful for filmmakers. Love it. I was a huge fan of Creative Video Combined, which is the pseudo video photo switch of the older cameras. But yeah, I don't know. I've used this as a photo and video camera in the same event, you know, where you would be using this switch the most, and it was never super natural to me. So maybe I just have to get used to it. But yeah, overall body design is pretty great. I'm still getting used to the photo video switch. It might just not be for me. And I just wanted to, in the editing room, talk to you about the battery. I don't care that it's the same battery. The battery life's a little worse than the other cameras, sure, but I would rather have the same battery form factor as all these other cameras that I already own and have everything unified, even if the battery life is a little bit worse, than to have to get a whole new battery, a whole new charger, and this. Yeah, maybe they could make the form factor and make it a little bit higher capacity. Go ahead and do that if you can, but I am more than happy with the battery life, especially because I'm typically using some kind of power delivery. And before we go any further, guys, I want to talk to you about this. Is the Pergear 512 gigabyte CFExpress card. Now, this isn't on the approved list for Lumix, but I think they've done a lot of amazing things with this. We've got a max read of 3,500 megabits per second, a max write of 3,400, which means this is going to easily handle any of the modes in the GH6, the GH7, or the S1ii. Let me put it back.
Yeah, so that's 18 minutes of ProRes 5.8K, barely warm. Okay, we got another 47, 50 minutes, nothing.
It also transfers incredibly quickly with their card reader here, which is, I think it's kind of cool. Like, it looks kind of like a chocolate bar. Doesn't taste like one though. I did a side-by-side comparison, offloading some footage, some shot on the CFExpress and some shot on the SD card. And while the CFExpress card was set to offload in under a minute, the SD card took over 12, maybe 15 minutes. And it remains really, really cool. Like, even when I got the camera to overheat a little bit later, this card still was incredibly cool, which implies to me that it did not contribute as much as other CFExpress cards would to the camera's internal temperatures. Previously, I was using the Angelbird card, which I think is fine and I never had any issues with in my GH6 or 7, but in a camera that has a little bit more heat sensitivity like the S1ii, having a card that is designed to have better thermal management like Pergear's is nice. I just pulled up the website, and right now the Pergear is on sale for $126 for that 512 gigabyte card. And the card reader is on sale for just $71. So yeah, I think this idea that CFExpress cards being expensive is not really true anymore. Okay, time to get controversial, guys. So please keep in mind, I have not worked with Lumix on anything. I definitely would in the future if they ask, but this is my camera. I bought with my own money. I fought off thieves to get to it. Check out this video for that story. And it's mine. I paid full price, whatever. But I'm gonna sound kind of like a shill here. Now, I did push this camera to its limits, which I'll talk about in just a second. But back to the alleyway here to re-record this because I talked about this overheating for so long. I just want to say that in any configuration, whether I was minimizing the heat using a little fan, occasionally, very minimal use on the fan, but I would use like the fan, the SD card, and just the battery, no USB-C or HDMI, no warnings. I used CFExpress and SD dual recording and internal battery, USB-C, outdoors, no overheating. But the days were not the hottest. The sun was never a huge factor for me, although I definitely didn't avoid the sun and there definitely wasn't no sun. But in any situation I could think of, even in the studio, 6K60, 5.1K60, recorded for over an hour and a half with CFExpress, internal battery, USB-C charging, I could not get this thing to have an overheating warning. So I knew I had to do what I had to do. I had to put it in the sun on a hot day directly and record 4K60, which is my most common format. And we got about 15 minutes, okay? And around that 15 minute mark, I got the warning, and within seconds, it shut down, which I thought was really surprising. So yeah, direct sunlight is the kryptonite of this camera. And if you're not willing to do some minor workarounds for it, it's gonna be a bad time. And by the workarounds, I mean unplugging some accessories, using a dummy battery, not using CFExpress, not using USB-C or HDMI and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot you can do, and even putting a fan on. If you put this tiny fan on, you're gonna have almost no issues with heat. That's just, it is what it is. But if you're not willing to make some small concessions, and if you just want the camera to work right out of the box, it doesn't. It will overheat in hot sunlight situations. And I don't want to say that as a complete guarantee. People have got this to overheat in the studios. People have got this to overheat with no sun. I don't know what they were doing. I don't know the situations, but it did happen and it is possible. It hasn't been my experience. I had to actively try as hard as I could to make this thing overheat. But in any other situation, shooting normally with barely any concessions, barely being careful, I had no problems. Oh, and by the way, if you're looking to get this fan and are not sure how it's going to mount to the camera because it's a little bit not technically made for this style of screen, then I would recommend getting these little Velcro dots, which is what I did, which can kind of just stick onto the back of the camera and then Velcro as one extra point of security of the fan and then hold it in with the screen. And that worked pretty well for me. Plus, the screen still 98% closes when you don't want to use the fan, which was really nice. So that was my solution. Let me know if you guys can think of anything more elegant. There are going to be little fuzzies on the back of your camera, but who cares? So that was pretty crazy. 15 minutes in 4K60 in direct sunlight. Now, I've really just realized though about how I shoot that is not something I do. The camera I'm operating, that I'm getting the glamour shots with the best quality, the highest frame rates, the best lenses, the fast primes. I'm shooting relatively short clips for the most part and syncing them all up later or using them for the highlight reel. The cameras that are recording full time, like full events at a wedding, like the full ceremony, full receptions, things like that, run much longer than my A camera. And so that I think is the main reason why this camera never overheated on me. I never did super long takes. Like I think some of the longest takes on the music video was 5 or 6 minutes, which was the length of the song. Some of the longest takes on the short film shoot was sequences that took like maybe 3 to 5 minutes. Still relatively longer, but nothing 15, 20, 30 minutes long. So yeah, is it super disappointing that this camera overheats? Totally. Kind of sucks. But I can see how when people say that most people shooting most things might never see a warning, especially if they're cautious and take a few of these things in mind and don't leave their camera like sitting in the sun and then picking it up and shooting it in the sun. Yeah, so what's my takeaway here from the heat? I could talk about this forever. This rant is probably insane. It's probably half the video. But my biggest takeaway, I think, is just don't fully rely on this camera. You know, like if you need this camera to work, if this is your only camera, if it's going to be your first camera, all that sort of stuff, really consider if that's the right option for you. It might be, it might still be. You might be like, I'm always in the studio, I'm always inside, I don't really need the CFExpress card, I'm okay to put up with that little fan. Maybe, but the main reason I was okay with this slightly volatile camera and this overheating situation was because I have a GH6, a GH7, a GH5S, cameras that will almost never overheat under any circumstances. I have shot years with the GH5S, the GH6, the GH7, hot weddings, hour-long ceremonies in the sun, 90-degree weather, 95, 98-degree weather, and I didn't even know there was a overheating warning on those cameras. In fact, I checked the menus in those cameras the other day, and they're still set to standard temperature threshold, not high, standard temperature threshold. And I've still never seen a warning under any circumstances. So the fact that I have a series of borderline unstoppable, indestructible Giga Chad cameras that are the GH6 and GH7 means that I can comfortably take this sort of glass cannon, giga powerful S1ii out in the field, getting insane creative shots with super fast primes and higher frame rates and the big zooms like the Sigma 28 to 105, and can rest easy knowing that even in the remote chance that this thing overheats with the situations I'm in and in the way that I use it, that I have 3 almost as capable, if not somewhat more capable cameras waiting to be picked up and take over. So that's why I say, if this is going to be your first camera or your main camera or whatever, consider the downsides of this overheating. But if you have a few cameras already, like if you have the S5 II and you're going to have an S1 II and an S5 II, then you should be totally fine, because the S5 II is, again, a super rock solid camera. So anyway, that's all I'm going to say about the overheating for now, without running some more in-depth tests. And again, you know, I definitely put it in the worst case scenario: internal battery, CFExpress card, all that sort of thing. But 15 minutes is a little disappointing for sure, especially when the S9, the camera known for like, we have to limit this camera because the overheating is so bad, went for 20 minutes before I got bored and packed it up. So yeah, anyway, overall thoughts: the S1 II is an incredible camera, super powerful, amazing specs, great image, incredible body design, with one serious flaw that might not be that serious depending on who you are. But yeah, again, I just wanted to get my honest thoughts out here as a, you know, real user of this camera who bought it with my real money. And again, if Panasonic ever sent this camera out to me, I don't think I would be any more or less biased, maybe slightly more, just because that's, you know, reality. But I'm always going to tell my honest opinions here, unless it's a sponsored video. Sponsored video, I'm still going to give you the honest facts the best I can, but that's a little different. These videos are completely independent. Even free gear reviews are all honest reviews on this channel. So please support the channel, like and share the video. Do whatever you can do to support. It would go a long way. Just watching this video is honestly support enough. Thank you so much for coming by, swinging by. If you have any comments about my real world use of this camera, please let me know down below in the comments, and I'll try to get back to each and every one of you, because I really think the more information that there is about this camera out there, the better. All right, guys, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching. And as always, if you are subscribed, I'll see you when I see you.